Kia ora everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Renee. I like to read books and then talk about them on the internet. Hi, it's been a while since we've done a reading wrap up. Yeah, I read a total of 5 books in the last 2 months, which is what we're wrapping up today. Yeah, we're doing a wrap up for May and June. Yeah, it's going to be pretty sad, so let's just get into it. Let's just get into what I've read. Also, if you can see, I've got like weird impression marks across my forehead. It's just because I've been wearing a cap, so I'm going to try not to tuck my ear here behind my ears. First up, I read Optic by Maria Gainza. This was actually my book club's pick for the month of April, I want to say. I'm talking about it in May, but I actually read most of it in April but finished it in May. Sadly didn't get to join the book club discussion this time round for this one. Still have some thoughts to share. This is a novel but reads very much like essays. So at the heart of this fictional story we have a narrator who comes from the art world. She is an art critic and kind of uses that lens of the art world, her kind of passion and knowledge, and I guess her career she's built around that. It all kind of filters the way that she sees the world. So the reason why I say that they read like essays is because a lot of the chapters or sections of the book tend to focus around one piece of artwork or a moment in her life that reminds her of a piece of artwork or an event that's kind of really shaped who she is. So you've kind of got part memoir, part essay for this fictional character, very much steeped in the art world. On paper, right up my alley. Like, obviously, I really enjoy reading about art, and I did enjoy that with this. I loved being able to go back and reference the artwork that she was talking about, and it definitely was a fun part of the reading experience. But I felt like the story as a whole kind of felt a bit disjointed because of that, and you're getting this built-up character based on things around her rather than very specific things, characteristics or descriptions of her. There felt like this weird distance between you and the narrator, this person who this whole story is kind of centered around because of how little personal information we were given. Yeah, I would say that was probably the only real issue for me, but it was big enough that it kind of isn't something that I particularly enjoyed all that much. I just felt like it kind of lacked any kind of personality for me, which was disappointing, but still glad to have read it for what it taught me. It's a very knowledge-filled book when it comes to art, and if you're interested in art at all, and that maybe if you kind of go in knowing that there's that distance between the narrator and the story, then you might not be so disappointed. That was the first book. Really surprised that I managed to kind of pull that little review out of it, because it feels like forever ago that I read that, and it literally was. So that was the first book that I read in May. Like I said, I read most of it in April but finished it in May. And then I spent many other weeks trying to get through Monsters by Dederer, which I eventually decided to DNF just because I couldn't bring myself to pick it up really. I'll talk about it briefly, but I won't talk about it too much. I think the reason I chose to DNF it was because a lot of the ideas weren't really being expanded on in any new ways within that collection. If you don't know what it's about, it's a kind of a personal essay collection about Dederer's dedication and love for Roman Polanski and his films, And she's really asking this kind of central question of, can we still appreciate the art of monstrous men? Which is definitely something that I am interested in and was looking forward to with reading this collection, but like I said, it kind of didn't really answer that question in a very clear way, and a lot of the chapters just felt quite repetitive, and a lot of the ideas became quite obvious, and nothing was really like revolutionary. Not that I think it needs to be, but it could have been a lot shorter, I think. I don't think it needed to be hashed over as much as it was. Yeah, those are my kind of quick thoughts on it. I may potentially finish it at some point, but I'm not going to dedicate too much time to it. I think I'll try a couple more essays based on someone else's recommendation. They really loved it and they want to kind of see me, I guess, change my mind about it. I don't know if I will, but I will definitely be reading those other 2 essays that they recommended to finish, just to kind of finish the book in my head, not finish it completely. But yeah, I spent most of May trying to read that book, and it took up a lot of time and energy, and I don't know, it's kind of taught me just like to DNF something a lot sooner. But yeah, that's that book. On to the next one. The next book that I read in May was The Woman Who Killed the Fish by Clarice Lispector. I decided to go back to something simple and read a children's-esque type book. Yeah, these are the New Directions storyboard books that they've put out. I guess a lot of them are supposed to act like or act as children's books, but these are actually children's stories written by Lispector, and yeah, it was okay. I found that for a short book, for a tiny book, it did still take me a wee while. Like, it took me 3 or 4 days to get through this, which is really no surprise. I mean, Lispector's writing, no matter how simple or who it's kind of targeted at, this one being for children, is still something that you need to wrap your head around or spend time with, and this was no different. So each story is about one type of animal, and they are written for different children. So you have a lot of them being addressed to her own children or to other members of her family. I found them almost like little riddles. They were children's stories, but very, very mysterious still. There wasn't any kind of obvious childlike tone to it, but I guess her simplified language led me to believe that there was some kind of hidden message in a lot of this. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would, but I still enjoyed it, and it was still nice to read something in kind of a short-ish amount of time, even though these are definitely books you could read in like one sitting. Recommend if you're a Clarice Lispector fan. Next in May, I listened to The Lucky Ones by Rachel Cusk. Still on my Cusk mission. This book I had to listen to on audio because I don't own it, and probably won't be purchasing it. 1, because I didn't really enjoy the book, and 2, this book has not been released in the Faber kind of branded editions that Cusk has, the ones we all know and love. Yeah, I don't know why this book hasn't been published or republished in that design, but every other cover that's available of it is pretty hideous, pretty 90s, and I definitely won't be adding it to my Cusk collection. unless they do publish it in the Faber editions, I will do it then, but only for aesthetic purposes, not because I enjoyed this book at all. Yeah, I found that the act of listening to this really didn't do this book any justice, and that I found it quite hard to keep up. There was a very big cast of characters in this book, and I just needed some kind of physical words to look at in order to be able to kind of track what was going on. Otherwise, listening to it just felt like background noise to me. So much so that I restarted it about 6 times because I lost my way so many times, and then by the sixth or 7th time I just gave up and thought I'm just going to have to just listen and just hope that it kind of comes later in the story, which it didn't really. I honestly couldn't tell you the plot of the story or what happens, other than we have this interconnected group of characters who come from an array of different backgrounds, but like I said, they're all interconnected in some way. I think one of them acts as like a lawyer for this woman who is in prison, and she, at the beginning of the story, has her baby in prison. And that's kind of like, there is mentions of other characters that I wouldn't even be able to tell you their names. A lot of the themes have to do with like motherhood. When I think about those kinds of themes, I think I would have really loved to have just gotten into this book more, but without having the physical words in front of me, I just felt like there was nothing to kind of connect to. Cusk's work audibly on its own, I don't think it works. I think you need to be able to appreciate the writing and the wit that I know was there, but it just wasn't going in. It just wasn't computing. And so I know that I've done myself a disservice to this book. I just said I wouldn't buy it. Maybe I'll get it from the library and try to read it again, but for now I'm just like, maybe that's why it hasn't been published, because it's not a good book. I don't know. Yeah. Pretty sad about that. Anyway, that was the last thing I read in May, and then if we could jump to June, I again was still in a bit of a reading rut, so I decided to just jump on and do the book that everyone wanted me to read, because you picked it, and that was East of Eden. I did a reading vlog on this book, so probably won't talk a lot about it, but if you want to hear me talk about it, you can go watch that vlog. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was brilliant. Obviously, it's a classic. Everyone loves it. Everyone talks about its brilliance. I can see the massive influence that this story has had on contemporary fiction and the way that writers probably look at story. It reminded me a lot of Zadie Smith's White Teeth, and the way that she chooses to build her stories. So yeah, it was a great book to read at a great time. It was good plot, good writing. It had everything that I love in a book. Familial relationships, kind of that epic long history of a family and their journey over time. Time felt like a massive presence in this book in a way that I don't think was so obviously mentioned or spoken about, but the mere size of it, the kind of journey with which we see these characters travel across, and how much time we spend with them without being given exact like dates and times past, is really impressive to impart that into a novel and make it feel epic and important. So yeah, that was really impressive. To give a brief synopsis of this book, it is about two families, the Hamiltons and the Trasks. and their lives and journey in the Salinas Valley, California, the ways that their lives intertwine, the ways that their members of the family kind of go through periods of grief and joy, and I guess the different ways that these families are prosperous. The novel itself is kind of a rewritten retelling of the story of Cain and Abel, and we see that dynamic pop up between obvious characters who are brothers and then less obvious characters, and as a whole it has this real biblical message through it, which I actually really enjoy reading. I love when characters' morals and values and beliefs are put into a story and can be the driving force for those characters. I find it really interesting, and especially when those values and beliefs and morals are questioned within those characters themselves, how they defend those beliefs, the ways in which they uphold them and live them out is always really interesting to me. And anytime a book kind of incorporates that into their characters, I think it makes them so much more interesting, and it's something that I just enjoy reading. Of course, I can't not mention the character of Kathy. So interesting, so intriguing, so insanely evil, and yet, yeah, just at the same time you sympathize with her and can kind of understand where she's come from, or what motivates her, and why she chooses to be the way she is. Yeah, really, really love this book. Could do a whole video on this book alone. I did, but I don't know if I did it justice. I don't think I ever could. I'd have to sit here for a whole hour and just chat, and that would be boring, I'm pretty sure. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Thank you guys for picking this book as my little read. It definitely felt good to read something again and have it be compelling and quick. 600 pages, but was like definitely just plotty and readable and good writing, and just that level of detail that is put into a story and how much it kind of builds around what is going on centrally. That omniscient viewpoint that I really enjoy, because you can be given context or things outside of individual characters, and yeah, I just love it. The last book that I read in June, yes, we're at the last book already, it was Permafrost by Eva Baltasar. I absolutely loved this book. I picked it up thinking I could read it in 2 days. It took me a little bit longer, but I did read it in 2 sittings. I read the first half in bed one night and it went by so quickly, and then I read the second half on a plane ride to Sydney. And yeah, instantly regretted not taking Bowler with me on my Sydney trip, because I really wanted to read it straight after this. It is the story of a unnamed, does she have a name? I don't actually remember. I'm so terrible with names. Yeah, we'll say she's unnamed. Unnamed female narrator, queer female narrator, and her battle with mental health, her kind of struggles. It's very much dipping in and out of moments in her life. She is this character who wants to spend her time and days just reading, and is very put out by having to be this adult who needs to have a purpose, have kind of drive and do these things that are expected of her. She is this very darkly humoured character who looks at life with such high levels of cynicism, but in a humorous way. So definitely looking at death and suicide and or within herself and kind of making fun of it, or seeing the irony in different situations and kind of making light of the dark. I really loved the voice of this character. I loved how dark it was versus how funny it was, and really loved the writing. I highlighted and underlined so much of this and cannot wait to read more of Eva Baltasar's. Boulders are on my pile for the next month, so I will be reading it for sure. But yeah, favorite. And that is the tiny pile of books that I read in May and June. I'm really grateful for these books because let's just say June was my favorite. Really enjoyed the 2 books that I managed to finish in that time. And yeah, can appreciate that I had a lot going on in those 2 months, and that's why I didn't get to read as much, but really want to get back into my reading, and for this not to be like a permanent state that I'm going to be in, because that would suck. Just a quickie today. Quickie, but still somehow I managed to talk for half an hour. Let me know how your last couple of months have been, if you have read any favorites. I'm sure many people have. Let me know what they were, and I'll see you in the next couple of videos. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Ka kite. See you later. I sound like Susie Cato. Bye.